Hello. Time to talk about Indonesia and specifically gamelan music. Indonesia is a huge place. Indonesia is a populous place, a widely diverse place. And so, because it's the way the book tends to work, we're not going to get enough time to spend a lot on it. When I first started looking at textbooks for world music classes, I always assumed that they would start with a chapter on gamelan, because it was at the beginning of the 20th century that the gamelan really kind of took Western musicians by storm. The fascination with Western musicians with non-Western music was largely focused on gamelan. The rhythms, the timbres, the fact that it's an ensemble composition improvisation process really struck some kind of a chord, if you'll pardon the expression, with European composers at the turn of the 20th century. And that also corresponds with sort of a fascination in general with the East. I'm one of those people who watches Antiques Roadshow, and you'll often see pieces from China or Japan that were constructed or built for the export trade, and they all date from that last quarter of the 19th, first quarter of the 20th century, when there was a fascination in Europe and America with the East. One of the most important things that happens with gamelan music is that it accompanies these elaborate and long shadow plays. If you go on YouTube and look for some of these, you'll find that many of them last 3 or 4 hours. It's not unusual to go once it's dark, when the sun is down, it's cool, you can relax, and you'll go and see a story. And they're almost always stories from some kind of stock experience. They deal with good and evil. They deal with the myths of Hindu and Buddhist and other cultures. And there are a lot of stock characters, just as there would be in Greek and Roman dramas. And they're really fascinating. And some of them have long sections that are really quite humorous. On the left of the slide, you can see the shadow representation. On the other slide on the right shows this from the back. And so even though the puppets are only seen in relief, they're highly decorated and very beautiful and elaborate constructions. Once again, we find out that there's a representation in the music of theological concepts, of heaven and earth, of good and bad, of this and that, yin and yang. And we have two distinct schools or areas of gamelan music, Java and Bali. And as with many of the other chapters, this chapter includes a lot of terminology that one could test on. It won't be tested on necessarily. The test will be drawn exactly from the study guide, but there's a lot of stuff to be examined. And in this little video, I just want to point out that there are a few common things and a few different things. One of the more striking things is that Javanese gamelans tend to be softer. Softer instruments, more wooden idiophones than metal idiophones, and the Balinese gamelan tends to be brighter and more vibrant. They also have a shared melodic construction, this skeletal melody, which is then improvised upon. It's a little more structured than a raga, but it's kind of the same thing. You'll also find out that there's a lot of polyphony and heterophony, but no real homophony and no harmony in the Western tonal harmony sense. They both also share this colatomic structure, this very elaborate rhythmic construction, which is really fascinating and sets up a hierarchy of beats that are marked by different gongs. There are also two tuning systems that are used in both traditions, Pelag and Slendro. Pelag is a system with 7 unequal steps per octave, which is not unlike us. And Slendro, it's a 5-note system, but unlike our pentatonic scale, which is unequal, the Slendro system has 5 almost equal steps per octave. So you can write in Pelag or you can write in Slendro, but you can't mix them. The other thing, because so many of the instruments are idiophones, bells, gongs, that sort of thing, They're built in families. So you don't just go and buy a gender, for instance, one of the instruments that's used. You buy or you construct the entire gamelan ensemble. So gamelan isn't really a musical style, it's a musical ensemble that is used to create a style. And this is a example of this called structure. The beat is at the very top. So the beat happens, and then it's divided in groups of 2, which are divided in 4s, which are divided in 8s, and there's one long 16-beat cycle. And it is someone's job to strike a gong that marks that 16th beat of every cycle. So that's all for this particular video, and there will be a couple more coming.